Okay, my friend Bailey, you were here a few years ago and hit the gavel, remember? You don't remember, huh? All right, come up and do it again. So much for that.
All the way around. Now she remembers. She used the word gavel.
She doesn't know the word gavel?
Oh, now you're getting me in trouble because you don't know the word
So this is
gavel.
what you're going to say.
I do. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Nice. Let's stand and would our students lead us in a flag salute?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine Law Statement, all requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the record in Town News and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darien, would you read the mission statement?
The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through the comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta. Mrs. Nigam.
Here.
Mrs. Downey.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mrs. Norian.
Here.
Mrs. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here,
Mr. Darien.
Here.
Mrs. Nichols.
Here, open to the public for agenda items only. Not seeing any, we'll move ahead, and we're going to go a little bit out of order so our students don't have to sit here and listen to all our boring
why not?
resolutions. So I'll hand it over to Ms. Bozios for a week of respect.
And I will hand it over to Mrs. Hawley for a week of respect.
This is fun. It's what I get to do. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Hagobian and Mrs. Avgerinos.
I mean, I've always wanted 4 people to introduce us.
Dreams do come true.
That's it. Well, thank you for having us, and welcome. This is going to be such a fun board meeting. They're usually all fun, but this one's going to be especially fun because our students are here today to talk to us a little bit about our week of respect that we had this year. And it's coming full circle for us because through our school safety and climate team, we had a meeting last year, and which is comprised of school administrators, teachers, parent, and students. What happened? I'm going out of order. No, but I'm just setting it up for everyone, so we're excited. So with that, right, we've gone full circle to have a lot of voices come in, and we want to celebrate and see how we did this year and then reflect on how we can move forward. So Mrs. Hawley, can we have slide 2, please? And I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Avgerinos.
Thank you. All right,
Oh, Mrs. Bailey.
I'm handing it over to Bailey. And Anthony.
What is the Week of Respect? The Week of Respect is a fun, fulfilling week where we learn to respect our teachers, staff, and peers. A time to show leadership to others who need it. The Week of Respect is celebrated in the first week of October in every school in New Jersey. Coincides with National Bullying Prevention Month.
So you remember all that stuff I was saying before? So here's that slide. So the school safety and climate team meets multiple times a school year. Last school year when we met in the spring, we had reflected on previous years of Week of Respect and the activities that we had did. Through that, we had our team, which has 2 administrators on it, a teacher on it, a parent, and 2 of our students. And they join those meetings and they talk a little bit about their experiences through the activities of the Week of Respect that they had in that year, and also take a little bit of the pulse of the school, which I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Avgerinos to share a little bit more about the different sources of data that we use to help guide what we do for each year of Week of Respect.
When data comes in, I get the floor because I love the data. So when we met in March for the school safety and climate team, we looked at our panorama surveys, which we distribute to students throughout the year. And we noticed that some areas that we needed to focus on were grit and self-efficacy. So in that committee meeting, we had student, staff, and parent feedback about some things that addressed grit and self-efficacy, including our open circle. So we talked a little bit more about open circle and how we wanted to increase our lessons focusing on that area, but also to build our school-home communication. So we're revising our expectations for that and the letters that will be going home so parents can continue the conversations there. So the conversation deepened, and we talked a little bit about how we can use these insights to shape the Week of Respect. And we were given some feedback from parents and teachers that when we've done the Week of Respect in the past, we had individual spirit days. And sometimes that overshadowed the message of the Week of Respect, which is really to build community and be inclusive and respectful, which is our focus here at OPS. So we used that feedback to create a Week of Respect that included individual spirit days that coincided with our theme for this year, which was grit. And also to include opportunities for the parents to continue these conversations at home. So we added in a column so that parents had opportunities to explore that as well. So that was kind of how we came to this Week of Respect, where we focused on how grit can help us be better citizens and build our community and take opportunities and initiative to build new relationships and friendships.
Hi, my name is Bailey Wax. I'm a sixth grader who is a member of the school safety and climate team. At our last meeting, we talked about how to make the Week of Respect better. I suggested that it needed to be more interactive with the students. Mrs. Holly and I brainstormed the Chalk the Walk idea, which was enjoyable and fun. We worked together as a community to make a beautiful mural for the community to see. The change in Week of Respect is better because the students need something to do to make it stick. Hi, my name is Anthony Estevez. I'm a sixth grader. What I really enjoyed about Week of Respect was that I could show leadership and be a good role model to the younger kids. My favorite activity was buddy reading. I like that the oldest Panthers were paired up with the youngest Panthers.
So one of the activities that we did in our classrooms was we were teaching handshakes, and we were doing it as a community. So students would maybe group together with a group that they haven't always partnered with, and they jumped in the groups and they taught each other handshakes. So today we're lucky we have some of our second graders and our fifth graders. We're going to invite our second graders up first. You guys can introduce yourselves by your first names, and then we can come on over and we could show everyone the awesome dance or handshake that you guys learned and taught one another.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm Olivia. I'm Elise.
Okay, and we also have two fifth graders who came up with their own Panther handshake. They're actually going to teach you how to do it, so you're going to have to find a partner.
forget to introduce yourself. Introduce yourself.
You go first. Hi, I'm Ayla Bectus. I'm Sydney Hazumi. Find a partner.
All right, find a partner. Find a partner. Okay, all right. You're ready? Sure.
Okay, so you're gonna put your hands and put one on top of the other.
We're still working on the partners. So when you're talking, just turn your face this way so you can talk right into it. Just nice and slow.
Okay, so you're gonna have one hand on top of the other like this. And then
One up, one down.
and then you basically high five. And then like bring it that way. And then you turn your hands to go the other way.
We do it again. We do it again. That's the first step.
Tell them to try again.
Okay, so one hand on top of the other, and like high five, and then turn your hands to high five the other way.
Okay.
Yeah. And then your one hand on top of the other like this now, and you do the same thing, just up and down. You want me to say the rest? You do the rest.
The fist bump. Right? I think that
Okay. And then you high five like twice.
high five
And then you fist pump into like a panther claw. And then you say it. Yeah, sup panther. You say sup panther. These are some examples of what we did for Chalk the Walk. And these are some examples that we did for buddy reading. Any questions?
Board have any questions? I'm sure there are questions. Turn.
How come girls only did the handshakes, not boys?
So Mrs. Holly did show us videos of the boys doing it, but they didn't really show as much Panther Pride as the other ones. No, they were like Panther, the other ones weren't.
You have a career. Because that's called a spin.
Did I say something wrong?
No, you said something really right. Good job. That was great. That was amazing.
I have a question. Who made up the handshakes?
Second graders, you want to go up and say who made up the handshake?
So come on up. You can all come up together, support one another. So they asked who came up with the handshakes. So you guys
came up
right.
with the handshake?
Talk closely into the mic.
They saw it on some rap show.
Catherine.
Did you see it on like somewhere, or did you guys make it up?
We just made it up.
So just how'd you do it though?
With teamwork.
Excellent. So you made it yourselves. That's good.
When we practiced, they did it right.
Did you say something about body reading? What did you say? Something reading?
reading.
Oh, buddy reading. What's buddy reading?
Buddy reading is where you read to like younger kids. So all I know is that the sixth graders read to the kindergartners. I'm not sure about any other grades. So
What grade are you in?
sixth.
So did you get assigned a special buddy? Or did you just pick
yeah.
one when you went in the classroom? How did you
There
know
were
who your
like
buddy
tables
was?
set up outside, and then we all just went to a table with like 4 kindergartners at each table.
Did you like it?
Yeah,
Who do you think liked it more, the sixth graders or the kindergartners?
probably the sixth graders.
Because you were helping, right?
Yeah.
That's nice. Mr. Griffin?
Bailey, what kind of messages did you guys chalk on the walk or walk on the chalk?
There were a lot of messages of grit, like we wrote out what the acronym is, and there were some messages of kindness, but mostly a lot of drawings.
Any other questions from the board? Mrs. Walker?
I just have to compliment you with all of the activities you've invented to do your handshake. I think that that's really very inventive, and I think you should be working on all grade levels so that they can follow through. Are you ready for that? Not so sure.
I think the board needs a little more lesson on the handshake. So if we could kind of get together and figure out when we might be able to meet, so we're a little better at that and don't look so awkward.
Before you become seventh graders.
Yeah, before you leave here, make sure that we know how to do that, okay?
We leave at 8:10 in the morning to walk. We'll stop by your house. Take you and Riley.
I'll meet you on Park Avenue.
Okay, we'll meet you there.
Bring the posse.
Okay. Thank you to Mrs. Hawley and Mr. Hagopian and Ms. Avgerinos and our students for being patient when Mr. Hagopian went out of order. You showed a little grit, tenacity, and kindness there. And to our second graders and to their teacher, Ms. Scanlon, who is not only here today, but here with all three of her sons, which is very brave of her. Thank you so much for being brave, because when you're only in second grade, coming to present at a Board of Education meeting probably seemed a little bit scary. So thank you for being brave, because that's one of the best traits you can have, okay? And to Bailey and, well, our fifth graders, I actually did get it, but tomorrow you'll quiz me and see if I remember, because real learning isn't being able to do it right there. I have to make sure I maintained that learning, so your job is to quiz me tomorrow. And to Bailey and Anthony, I'm incredibly proud of both of you, because I know that just 7 short years ago, you were tiny little kindergartners, and now you are leading our school community. So thank you very much for being here today and being leaders as well.
So the board wants to thank everyone for coming. The students, all of you did an excellent job. We're so happy you came to our meeting, and we're going to just take like a 2-minute break so you guys can leave if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting. We won't be insulted, and we hope to see you here again, but thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Hey.
Thanks. See you later.
No, but we will soon.
Do you want to go to HIB next, or
Do you want to do this next? Okay. So, full disclosure, I forgot to do my copies. So Mr. Hagopian's doing copies of the HIB self-assessment for you now. So he's run them, they're coming. It has been a day for me of talking about harassment, intimidation, and bullying. I started off at 9 o'clock, and then at 10:30, and then at 6 tonight with doing parent volunteer training for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Okay, the copies didn't go so well, so we will definitely get them for you. So one of the things that when I talked to you last year about the harassment, intimidation, and bullying self-assessment, that was a goal for us, was to get our parents back in to do harassment, intimidation, and bullying training if they were a PTA volunteer who were coming into the building. So in the spring, we trained about 100 parents, and today I trained probably about 75 more, and we had some grandparents here today as well. So you might remember that every year we have to do a school self-assessment on the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. The self-assessment is based on 8 core elements. Those have not changed over time, and 26 indicators. And we self-assess and look at the school year from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. After tonight's presentation, the data will be submitted to the state by Ms. Bozius. I have sent her my school report. She will review it. She has to certify that we did a presentation tonight, and it will get submitted to the state. There is no minimum score provided by the New Jersey Department of Ed for passing or failing. The baseline score for meeting all of the requirements is 59, and the highest that you can get is 78. The 8 core elements are HIB programs and initiatives, training on the Board of Ed approved policy, other staff instruction and training programs, curriculum and instruction, HIB personnel, school level HIB incident reporting procedure, HIB investigation procedure, and HIB reporting. So this is the meat and potatoes of my presentation. So we're going to start with our totals. So you'll see in 2019-2020, that was when we last had our highest score of 71 out of 78. That was a pre-COVID, start of COVID score. In 2021 and 21-22, we scored a 70 out of 78 because we were not able to do as many of the in-person trainings. This year, I'm happy to say we are back up a point to 71 out of 78. You'll notice that that point was gained in the training on the Board of Ed approved Board of Ed policy. That goes with our parent training. It also goes with the training that we conducted with our outside vendor that comes in from Labburger and Calabria that the PTA works with. We train those staff as well. So I'm very happy that we have been able to get back into that rhythm of training the parents. The way I've been working through the training is to talk to parents about how problems are possibilities for our students and our staff to learn and grow. And we really focus on not just what the HIB law is, but how we follow the law, how we conduct an investigation, what we do for our parents who may have concerns if they're here as a volunteer. We don't expect our parents to be able to go right to the website and pull up the parent reporting form. I would much prefer that they immediately reach out if they see a concern during pizza lunch or at Fall Fest or any of our other PTA activities, if they reach out right to the assistant principals. So I've asked them to do that. A piece that I'm really proud of with the parent HIB training is that we really connect it to everything that we do. That being a community that cares about our students helps build our students up and keeps them protected. So I'm happy to share that last year we had 2 HIB cases that were brought to us. Both of them were founded. So that's keeping on average with where we have been over the last couple of years. I was able to share with the parents today that we have had in the past 3 or 4 years no more than 4 cases at a time. And I believe we have not had more than 2 founded cases over the last 3 years. So I do think the work that we're doing through our social emotional learning communities, curriculum and building community is really helping to continue to look at problems as possibilities. When we compare 22 to 23, we scored obviously 1 point higher overall on the assessment from 21-22. As I shared, the area that we showed strong growth was in the training. And we continue to show strong scores in the area of incident reporting and investigation. I am very lucky to have Mr. Hagopian and Mrs. Avgerinos as our anti-bullying specialists in our building, because they really do follow the protocols and the legal parameters that are set forth by the NJDOE. Using Hibster, which is our online program, helps keep us on track. It helps us to make determinations, and it helps us to stay within the 10-day investigation, 10 school days investigating time frame. It really does allow us to turnkey from them to me, from me to Ms. Bozius, and then from Ms. Bozius to you. The school safety and committee team meetings and our panorama self-assessment, SEL self-assessments of students, were able to identify the need for focusing on perseverance and grit, which helped us make a determination what our theme for the school year would be and how we would help students kind of see how to be successful. We've really worked, as you can see, with our Week of Respect. I am particularly proud, and again, Mr. Hagopian and Mrs. Avgerinos had a great hand in making sure that we were connecting our Week of Respect, so it wasn't 5 days of Spirit Days, but it was 5 days where we focused on a theme. We were able to connect a school activity and a home activity. So we sent home activities that parents could do. I did an OPS Reads video where I read a story about a rhinoceros and an egret who learned to be friends and the importance of boundaries in friendships. When we look at moving forward, we need to continue to focus on school culture and climate and ensuring that all of our new members on the school culture and climate team receive professional development. So that will continue to help us strengthen core element 1. We're going to continue to establish our school-wide open circle routines and expectations. In core elements 1 and 2, they ask us to go above that baseline score of 3. A 3 is exceeding expectation, a 2 is at expectation. So in order for us to move from a 2 to a 3, some of the work that we need to do is identify needs within our social emotional learning curriculum to continue to promote positive school climate and behavior. One of the things that we budgeted for this school year was for me to work with the grade level teams after school to be able to pay them to see what we are doing that is going well with our social emotional learning, and what are some of the gaps, what are some of the behaviors that we are seeing that we need some help with, that we could improve as communities. One of our jobs as one of my jobs as the anti-bullying coordinator is to work with a school safety and climate team to look at the HIBs and see trends, determine trends. When you have only 2 or 3 or 4 HIBs a year, even over 5 years, it's a little tricky to determine trends. But our teachers, who are seeing behavior trends every day, and our assistant principals who support our teachers with our code of conduct, really can help us identify what those trends are. Once we have those trends, we're gonna look at where does Open Circle help us meet those trends? And where might we need to kind of shore up Open Circle? Another piece that we're going to continue to work on is how we're sharing with our parent community what is happening in the classroom. Again, deepening that caring community is really important to me. Helping our parents see what we do in school and being able to give them some language that they can use with their children at home will continue to help us kind of deepen and grow our community. We're going to increase the number of parent volunteer HIB trainings this year. We've already done that because I did 3 and last year I did 2. I'll have at least 3 more this school year. Anyone who is a PTA member and on any of the volunteer committees, we now have a spreadsheet. We have if they were trained by Ms. Bozius in 2019, if they were trained by me last year, if they were being trained this year. Once we have all of that together, the PTA is going to reach out to all community members and make sure that they will commit, if they're going to continue to come into the building this year, that they will commit to coming to one of the next trainings. Something else that's new for us to look at and work on this year is we will have a new juvenile detective liaison in the Oradell Police Department. So once the new detective takes over, he and I will sit together and we will make a plan on how we can have a strong relationship as school to police department, and I can continue to build our relationship that I've already started with our current juvenile detective liaison, Mark Fedorchak, who is retiring this year. I don't have Bailey and Anthony to say, do you have any questions? I'm not as cute as they are.
Anyone have questions from the board? Mrs. Walker?
This was very informative. I guess my question is, all the school districts need to submit their scores, correct? And each school district is held responsible to make up their own scores. Not make up, but to
self-assess, yes.
collaborate. So, and I applaud you guys. I've seen over the years how critical you are in the areas that we need to improve. Are there some districts that just puff it up and they have, 78 over 78 or whatever's the top score? Not you, Mr. Walsh.
There could be. I do look around at some of our neighboring districts. I focus more on what we're doing and what our next steps are, because that's really what's most important to me. When you look at like what could get us a 78, it's really detailed. There are a number of pieces that, as I sat and looked at like where we are and kind of moving forward and where I feel like we could probably grow in a few more areas, some of it is really realistic, like bringing in our parent community, looking at how we communicate out what we're doing for HIB education and SEL education with the parents. That's all very realistic and very easy for us to grow. When I look at some of the things that we need for, to kind of score that above and beyond for our suicide prevention, it gets quite lengthy, and I'm not sure that that's a great use of the time of our teachers. The suicide prevention is very important. They do their mandating training. We have it through Vector. We have in the past brought in a medical health professional to also do it. So we can bring that in again every couple of years. I think that's important. But when we go really detailed with some of those things, or even explaining exactly what each point on the self-assessment means, I'm not sure that's an area right now that I'm ready to really dig in and spend a lot of our time. I'd rather look at the needs that we're seeing with our students, with their academic learning behaviors and their self-regulation behaviors, and the impact that we see that COVID had on them, and dig into that for right now.
And thank you for that, because I think honesty is the best policy, and we learn always from where we can do better. So kudos to you guys for all you're doing to encourage improvement.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, I know. Mrs. Needham?
Can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of conversations you have with the juvenile detective, and what are some of the topics that you work with them on?
Sure. So when I first came on as AP, as I was having, I was learning about student behaviors and everything, Detective Fedorchak and I sat down and we talked just about some of the trends that I was seeing and some of the things that I was worried about. There are some legalities that we have to communicate to the juvenile detective liaison. So if we have a student that a teacher or an assistant principal or a staff member calls DCPP, we communicate that information to the juvenile detective liaison. And then he looks at if there are concerns that the Oradell Police has to follow up on. Last year, when we had the concerns about the lockdown, we had student behaviors during a lockdown with a substitute. That was concerning to me. I reached out to them and said, what could you guys do to kind of help support this? Because it is a security measure. We work also together. We meet at least once a year to discuss kind of what our security plan is. So part of our memorandum of agreement with the police department, Ms. Bozius has to share our school security plan with them. So we go over it. Last year, when Mr. Cusack was hired as our Director of Buildings and Grounds, he sat with Sergeant Detective Fedorchak, Mr. Hagopian, and me, and we went through our whole school security plan. So I plan on doing the same thing with the new detective. Sometimes if we have concerns about patterns of behavior that we might see, we've had students who might threaten some violence, or we might think need to go out to be observed and evaluated by a medical health professional, that also gets communicated to the police. So they can keep a record and look for trends as well.
Any questions, Mr. Walsh?
So I'm looking at the numbers, the assessment results. And you mentioned that if you added the suicide, we might pick up 1 point in the programs and initiatives, and you didn't think it was worth it at this time.
At this time.
But there's still 2 other things. I'm sure that you have a list where on number 1, we could get 2 more points. I don't know what they are. You know what they are.
I remember last year that Mr. Darian asked me why I was focusing on something when it didn't seem connected to the core element. So this year on the slide, so you'll notice on the moving forward slide, it tells you what we're going to be focusing on and the core element that focus meets. So the continuing to focus on school culture and climate team will help us build core element 1. Looking at what we're doing in Open Circle and where our strengths and our needs are with an Open Circle helps us focus on core elements 1 and 2. And working with a new juvenile detective liaison to create a strong relationship also helps us work on core elements 1 and 2.
Okay, what about number 3? Can we pick up a point at number 3? Or 2 points?
Well, you can only score 9. Number 3?
Yes.
I can look at it.
Yeah, I'm not going to grade you or...
I think right now I'm going to be very honest. The behaviors that we're seeing and the needs of our students really focus more on on core elements 1 and 2. The more that we can work with the staff on our social emotional learning program and really making sure that we are all using the same core language from grade kindergarten through 6th grade will help us build up a number of points there. And then we can also look at core element 3.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I have a question. The students mentioned it, and you touched on it. They used to do Spirit Day during Week of Respect, and you kind of change it to theme days.
So our Week of Respect, I'm just going to pull it up. So We always had a theme day for Week of Respect. So each day there would be a theme. So we used to put out, and I did not give you the printout of this, but this was what was sent out to parents this year. What we used to send out to parents and staff just said, Monday, wear blue to stomp out bullying. Tuesday, wear shades or sparkles or anything reflective so you can reflect on how you make new friends. And then we didn't do anything to connect that to Week of Respect or to have a homeschool connection. So when we met, one of the parent that was at the school safety and climate team said, you know, my kids come home and they tell me they wore blue and they didn't really talk about it. And that kind of really hit home to us. And Bailey mentioned it as well. She was like, yeah, we do these fun activities, but we don't really connect them to being respectful and building our community and creating anti-bullying language and anti-bullying work. So that's why we really looked at how we can connect our theme of grit to what's happening in the classroom, to what's happening with showing our spirit, so it still has that each day has a theme, to the home extension.
This was this year's?
This was this year's. So parents got to see exactly what was happening in the classroom, and there was an activity home extension for them as well.
And this is supposed to link grit and Week of Respect?
Yes.
And
so
what else?
And what?
And what else?
Grit, Week of Respect, and then the home extension.
Okay.
So each day focused on one of the areas of grit. So we like to use grit to stand for grow, reflect, take initiative, and show tenacity. So each one of these was connected to those. So Monday was say hello. One of the things I noticed is that not all of our kids say hello to adults that they pass in the hallway, even if an adult speaks to them first. And when Ms. Bozio was principal, that was something that was really important that she kind of ingrained in me. So we started off a little bit easy and said, we want you to say hello to everyone that you pass in the hallway. I often say to our faculty that I know if you passed a student in the hallway who was crying, you would stop and talk to them. But when you pass students in the hallway who are just walking, do you say hello? Because that's being part of a community, that's being part of a family, acknowledging each other, knowing that there are people here that notice you. And that's very important. Then Tuesday, we reflected on, kind of build from that, we reflected on how to say hello and make new friends. And that's where the handshakes came from. And they were able to use a Flipgrid to post a video of the handshakes that they created. Then Wednesday was taking initiative and meeting someone new, and that's where the buddy reading came in. Thursday was tenacity. So there was a STEAM challenge that they had to do, which they built. They used index cards, and they wrote some some words about being gritty, being positive, and then they had to work together to build a tower as tall as they could. One of the kindergartners, Mrs. Dominguez's tower was taller than she is. And then on Friday, it was being kind and saying nice things to one another just builds positive community, and that's where the Chalk the Walk came in. The Chalk the Walk we couldn't do on that Friday because it was raining, so we had to wait until the following week. So the Chalk the Walk didn't happen all at the same time, which we were hoping to kind of come together all as a community and being able to kind of spread out and do each one of our sidewalks out front. But as Bailey shared, it was still a very popular activity. They were able to do it within their classes.
So your theme this year is grit. What did you say?
Grit.
Stands for growth. What did you
Growth,
say?
reflection, initiative, tenacity.
Thank you. I think the score is excellent.
Thank you.
And I think your focus is needed. Like you said, you could go to a 78, but the time it would take and what would be necessary, we would be lacking in some other areas, I think. So this is an excellent score.
It was my goal to get back up to that 71. And now that we're at that 71, we know exactly what to do to keep the 71. So we can continue to grow that over the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if we can maintain a 78, get it to a 78 and maintain it. And I'm not sure if that's the most important thing to building our positive community.
Right.
And maybe we'll get there one day and we can stay there.
I think it's an excellent score. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
You will notice under, are you done?
Yes, go ahead.
You will notice under administrative items, I did add the submission of the anti-bullying Bill of Rights self-assessment score. Doing the presentation is enough, but moving forward, I will be adding those submissions on there. It just documents that it did happen. The two other really exciting events have happened since our last board meeting, and so many people made them happen that I want to make sure I mention them. Number one was during Fire Prevention Week. You may have noticed, thank goodness there wasn't an emergency in Bergen County. 2 fire trucks, several police vehicles, the Hummer, the prosecutor's office cyber crimes unit, and also the Bergen County Firehouse, which is a really interesting thing. It's like a camper, and they actually fill it with smoke so students can have the experience of what it would be like if they were in a fire to crawl underneath the smoke and out a window. Several of our teachers also climbed out the window. The fire department went all out and actually let us use the fire hoses. Sadly, Mrs. Melinda beat me in a fire hose race, but I will be taking her on again next year with a little bit of training. I blame the fireman behind me. He kept pulling me back. Yeah. But it really was, and Mr. Gotthelf is the head of Office of Emergency Management, and I told him I have honestly never seen a school do a better day where kids were literally engaged and learning. They got to try on tactical vests. They got to sit in the Hummer. And I know that our kindergartners didn't get to have that experience that day, but they will be going down to the fire department instead because bad scheduling, their field trip was that morning. And then the other event that I don't know if you heard, we had some visitors to OPS yesterday. The New York Giants visited. And first of all, it is not because we have some alignment with the Giants. There have been lots of concerns that we don't like the Jets. It's just we take what people want to give us. So the New York Giants are paired up with the American Heart Association for the Play 180? Play 60. I knew it was a number, the Play 60 program. And as I've shared in the past, Oradell Public School has raised over $100,000 for the American Heart Association in the last 4 years. Mr. Kelly and Miss Mayella may be the favorite PE teachers in all of New Jersey of the American Heart Association. They send them daily emails now trying to get them to do more. As a way of saying thank you, they chose OPS as one of only 2 schools in the state of New Jersey to have a visit for the Giants, and we thought it was no big thing. And then they were like, no, we want you to make this really big. So Mr. Butcher got his musicians, and he welcomed them with music. Mr. Iapelli heard it in his office, and he actually thought it was a recording. It was so good. Our halls were lined with our younger students with signs, and our 6th graders got to hear from the players and also play with them on the field. And it's the little things sometimes that always make me proud to be superintendent. And when I heard that our students were actually playing with the sound crew and the other staff and asking them for autographs, it just said who we are as a community, that we are welcoming to anyone, and I think everybody had a great day. So with that, I am going to conclude my report.
Thank you. I think we'll move to Business Administrator's report.
I don't have anything to report at this time.
Okay, let's move to minutes. We had the review of October 4th. Any questions or comments, please email Mr. Iapelli, and we need to approve September 20th. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of September 20th.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Walker. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, committee reports. Mr. Darian, would you take administrative?
Yes, I'd like to introduce item A1, which is our ABR self-assessment.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam?
Yes.
Mrs. Downey?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Darian?
Yes, we've had no meeting since our last, no subcommittee meeting since our last meeting here. But I do sit on the Finance and Technology Subcommittee meeting, and they had discussed some buildings and grounds items that we were recommending, specifically roofs. You know, we have every so many years we have our roofs audited, and we get a report, and you know, based on the report, you know, we decide to do something or decide to do nothing. Well, this time around, we decided to recommend to move forward with 2 small roof sections, and the other 3 that were discussed that could possibly need replacement, we're going to do some further investigation, but we wanted to commit to at least doing 2, and the Finance Committee agreed. So that's good. You know, we had discussed also other things in buildings and grounds, but they, you know, they were nowhere near as important, so I can't recall them. So that's it. And with that, I'd like to introduce, you know, item B1. It's not listed as B1, but it must be,
I'll
right?
second.
Yeah, B1. Seconded by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Well, I guess you could say we talked about the Airedales for next summer, the stairwells for next summer, finishing that if you want, right?
Is that B and G, or is that?
No, it's buildings and grounds.
Well, those were items that we had discussed with Finance, but we are moving forward with, we have 12 Airedales, correct? Or no? How many? 8? I still get that wrong. I'm always thinking 12 in my head. So we have 8 Airedales. This is a type of HVAC unit that sits in the classroom. It has both air conditioning and heat, and it's made in England, and it's not very consistent with what we have here, and it's very expensive, and we've been kicking the can down the road trying to fix them. Well, we're at the point now where they need replacing. They're very expensive, as you can imagine, and we're moving forward with it. And 8 units are a sizable chunk of money. And the stairwells we started already last summer. We're going to continue this summer. What else are we talking
Well,
about?
the 8 Airedales, we have those left over, because didn't we do some in the ESIP? And these we did not do.
Right.
We've replaced them, a lot of them.
Well, during the ESIP program, we have what's called univents.
Right,
And they
right.
were all replaced. Those are big, huge, just heaters that sit underneath the windows. But we did not replace the Airedales. Because of the cost, it would have blown out our budget, and we would have not gotten the money to finance the ESIP. So what we did was we just bought some fans, we fixed some dampeners, we, you know, cleaned them out. It cost us, I don't know, I think it was maybe $10,000 or $15,000 just to, you know, push the can down the road.
But now all the classrooms will have replaced either Univent or Airedales, right?
Yes, so in
That's good.
2018, I think it was, or 2019, when we did the ESIP, we replaced all the univents in the building, including in the hallways. We air conditioned this room. We replaced all the LED lights. We did a lot of work, but we excluded the Airedales. So, you know, now that we're replacing the Airedales, all the classroom heaters, air conditioners will be updated. Yeah, the exhaust fans, you know, I don't know why we talk about them, but we bring it up. Exhaust fans are just basically bathroom exhaust fans. The only difference between the school and your house, the house, you're pulling 110 cubic feet per minute, and it costs you $135 at Home Depot. Over here, it's a big rooftop unit like a restaurant, and it costs $6,000 to $8,000. So it's expensive, and we have a lot of bathrooms. They all have fans that need to be replaced. So obviously, on this agenda, we have our architect has to work with drawings, and we have to pay quite a bit of money to replace them. It's not? I thought it was.
Yeah.
That's under finance, yeah.
Mrs. Walker?
Just a quick question, and I really don't know, but the Airedales are so expensive, so we have 8 of them.
Yeah.
Could we replace 4 this year, or 2 this year, and 2 next year, and kind of do it that way?
Well, what we decided to do was, apply for a ROD grant, which stands for a Regular Operating District Grant, and the state has agreed to pay 40%. Well, that's their offer.
Of the 8?
Of the 40% of the expense for the 8. And that's why we went for the 8,
Okay.
so that we get the max amount of money through the ROD grant.
The other reason is it's going to be very disruptive next summer. We have to bring in, I think, cranes, right? It's going to be very disruptive. We're going to have to shut down part of the building, so we need to do them all. It's very disruptive. It's big work.
Wow.
So we're going to do them all at once and be done.
They're huge
And
units.
We're getting 40% from the state.
Well, that's good.
They're huge units, and we have small, doors. I mean, they just don't, you can't disassemble them. So you got to bring them in from the outside in, kind of like a big piano. So
The old ones or the new ones?
both.
Oh,
The old ones, I guess you could take a Sawzall to it and chop them up, but to bring in the new ones, it's a big job.
okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions? Call the question?
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes,
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, curriculum, Mrs. Negum?
Nothing to report at this time. I would like to present item C1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question?
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
yes,
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, finance, technology, Mr. Griffin?
Yes, we just had a meeting on October 9th, and some of the items that we covered, investing some of our funds that we have setting aside into a CD, we talked about that. Buildings and grounds projects that we just spoke about, that will be in there tonight, about those exhaust fans. And then we also talked about the board's goal on technology and some of the routes we're going to get to make sure we accomplish that this year. Those were the main items, and with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion for D1 through D5.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question?
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
yes,
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, personnel, Mrs. Walker?
yes. I'd like to present E1, and also in your package, you'll see an update from our Personnel Committee meeting that we had October 4th. We had an update on the new staff that was here at OPS this year, and nurses' aid salary, which we agreed to $28 an hour, with a few other things here.
I'll second it.
Any questions?
Can I get a little bit more clarity on that new stipend request item?
For the
what
robotics
that means?
class?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? You want to take over? It's not going to be a stipend per se.
Right. We started with personnel, and then we actually brought it up at finance that we were going to run it as a pay-for-play opportunity this
right.
year. I know that the form for people to sign up has been written. I do not know if it has been emailed out yet. It has been emailed out yet. So instead of a stipend, we're doing it that way this year instead.
Okay.
Might-
Any other questions? Call the question?
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yeah.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes,
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Delegate report, Mr. Walsh?
I have nothing to report. There has been no meetings.
Okay.
in any of the committees.
Policy, Mrs. Norian?
Yes, I would like to present item G1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Mrs. Walker?
I just think in regards to policy that we talked about, maybe looking at the policy that relates to campaigning on school grounds.
We're going to have a policy meeting. We need to have a policy meeting. We have things
Yeah.
outstanding, so that's
Okay.
one of them.
Oh, yeah, well, that was the other part, is we do need to have a policy meeting because there are things we need to address. So if you have items that are of interest, please share them with me or with Ms. Bozios, and we'll move forward on them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes,
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, public relations, Mrs. Acosta? Public relations has been working hard.
Yes, I was going to say, we've had 2 long meetings. We're working on, I thought I was loud enough. We've had 2 meetings. We're working on 3 different surveys, one for students, one for staff, and one for parents, and more to come. We're still working on them.
I have a question.
Mr. Darian?
The surveys, we were going to see a copy of them?
The board's going to get them next.
We are?
Yes.
Yeah, we just
Yes.
met before this meeting.
We've kind of
We're still-
finalized them now, so
Okay, I just didn't know the
by
timing
this
of that.
weekend, they should be finalized and the board will see them. Okay. Open to the public. Yeah.
Jen Allen, Wildwood Road. I was unsure if I was going to be able to make tonight's meeting and had planned to send an email to administration and the director of curriculum as a follow-up to my meeting with her. But after being contacted by so many members of the Oradell community, including today, I thought it was important to make this statement publicly to the board, those that are watching on live stream or the many that watch the recordings, obviously. As a New York educator, I still don't quite understand the ins and outs of a school board, but I do know that there is a curriculum committee. Don't hear very much from that committee, but I do know it's part of this board. As I said, I have many families that reached out to me after I spoke at the board meeting in June on reading. More reached out after your September meeting on testing, and more still after goal-setting conferences. A few friends, of course, to offer support, but many more in town that I have no connection to. There are families that are part of OPS currently across grade levels, some that have moved on to middle school, even 2 high school families that have 0 connection right now to OPS. I've had families with no kids yet at OPS reach out and ask me questions, and I've had several families warn me that they don't come forward or that they don't speak up for fear of retaliation against their children when they were here or now when they are here. I've had many families share with me that they don't come forward and speak up their concerns because they don't feel that they have the education background and way to express it, but that they do have serious concerns. I've had families tell me I'm wasting my time because those that are in charge here and the decision makers don't agree and don't value what I have shared. I've shared with this board about the science of reading. I've shared with the curriculum director and Mr. Hagopian in the past about my concerns about math, Mrs. Hawley as well, about the curriculum. I've heard from tutors in this community. I've heard from parents that have tutors. And I think you'd be surprised at how many there are. I've had requests to hold information sessions at the library and the senior center. I've had parents offer to set it up for me. I've had them stop me on the playground, even at ShopRite. and asked me to be the spokesperson. They've asked me to create petitions. I've had parents ask me to gather parents to bring them here. I'm not looking to rally the troops. I've got a full-time job and I tutor, I have a long commute, a husband, and 3 pretty amazing kids. So I do have a full plate. I don't want to be the spokesperson, but I can't sit back quietly. I'm a huge, huge supporter of Willow and Gray's current teachers and Willow's past teacher, and I think that's really important to say. They are nothing but amazing. And I also think that there are so many amazing aspects of OPS, but a curriculum is not one of them. I wish my school had the class size, the number of people on an admin team, and the resources that OPS has. I'm a New York City educator. I have class sizes of 32, an admin team of 850 kids of 2 of us. While I know from experience that rallying the masses can make the changes, I'm only here to advocate for my kids. I know a school can't do it all, it's partnership from home, but to hear repeatedly from you, the decision makers, things like we're waiting for state standards, we don't want to go too far the other way, the standards just came out more times than needed, things like I've been trying to get rid of that curriculum for years, but then nothing's been done since, or hearing from another member of your team that the teachers asked for more time to review curriculum after a year in progress when changes were supposed to be made is really frustrating. To be told interventionists only are trained in DIBELS, and we hope that classroom teachers will soon use that data, is really disheartening. To hear this and know that my concerns aren't mine alone, and then to see the goals and priorities of the school for the year sends the message that you, the decision makers, don't feel that changes are needed or that there's no sense in urgency in making these changes. I know educators, many educators, that have left this profession with shame after so much came out on the science of reading. I know parents that have so many regrets after listening to the Sold a Story podcast and then doing their own research. My kids are in K&1 with 1 more to come your way. My kids can't afford to wait. I do feel a sense of urgency. It's the holes and gaps of kindergarten through 2nd grade that create so many avoidable struggles in later grades, and I think you've seen that from your own testing and state testing in math. This is why it is foundational work in K-2 and why it is essential. I don't want my kids to have procedural math and fact fluency without number sense. I know what it leads to. I know a basket of decodables added to a classroom isn't going to do the trick. Foundations added to 1 more grade level isn't going to do the trick. Manipulatives and a consultant on the workshop model for math isn't going to do the trick, because unfortunately there isn't a trick in education. There's no shortcuts. Kids don't fit in a box, meaning they don't fit into a boxed purchase curriculum, nor are their curriculums written for specific state standards. So along with curricular, there needs to be a lot of support for teachers. Big changes are needed. This is urgent. And I hope you agree and start to take some action.
Thank you for coming. I would just ask you to encourage the people that speak to you to come forth, write letters, and I know you talk about retaliation. I know you talk about retaliation.
And it's been so many people that have said those words to me, and I don't quite understand that from a administrator perspective, what exactly that means. People have given specific examples, and I don't need to rally them. I don't need to encourage them. Everybody has the right to do.
But we would like to hear from people specifically, because a lot of people come to say,
well, maybe they'll hear you, because plenty of people have watched because they've found me, which is encouraging for me,
But
right?
I can tell you in this building, for a parent to come forward to say something about curriculum, there would not be retaliation. You can ask the head of the teachers union. That would probably be the opposite in this building, actually, looking to help. But I would encourage you to encourage them to come forward. Definitely. And Mrs. Negum, I think it's something we can put on the curriculum agenda, right? The science of reading, I would like to look at that. Yes. Mr. Darian?
I have a comment and a question. So you mentioned, I'm not supposed to ask you a question, but if you decide to, reach out later on, or if you want to respond, that's fine. But you mentioned that people in the community have concerns. Well, I have concerns. I have very strong concerns. My kids are not in school, well, primary school, but they had it rough, and they had it rough with reading, and I have scars to prove it. So I understand that some of the members of the community might have concerns and may feel that people here on the board maybe think it's less of importance, but that is not the case. I don't think anyone is going to be feeling more passionate about this than I am. And I went on record saying it. The other thing is, you mentioned a sense of urgency. So my question to you is, what do you think is an acceptable timeline to switch gears and adopt your method? I don't know anything about the science of reading. You ask me how to fix your car, I could tell you. But what do you think is an acceptable timeline to put together curriculum, training, and roll it out? I'm just curious.
So I think any school leader is going to give you a different answer on what they feel is an acceptable timeline. There are many school leaders that would want to have years unpacking training before it ever gets to a student level. And I'm telling you, my kids don't have that time, because if we take that time,
I get it,
my
but-
kids are going to be 5th and 6th graders.
But you mentioned that you're a professional in this field.
I am.
So if someone were to ask you, forget about where we
So
are right now.
my school has
Yeah.
been doing it for years.
Right. And how long did it take to get that up and running?
There are pieces of it, but the full scale, probably a year.
Okay.
But none of this is new. This isn't new
No,
research.
I get it. I get it. I completely understand. You came here before us.
From what I've had people share with me about Go Math, the concerns weren't new.
Right. I'm not trying to be adversarial here. I'm just, I'm a board member, and I interact with the superintendent and the other board members, and we discuss things, and our superintendent advises us. And so I want to have realistic expectations, because I agree.
To be honest, I thought there was going to be a new math curriculum in place this year.
Okay.
From the conversations that I had when my daughter was a kindergartner, the concerns that I shared, and what was shared with me was teachers wanted more time to look through curriculum. So there was another year.
So you think this should be done like in a year, within a school year?
I think it's scary that we are where we are. With the amount of resources that are available here,
Right.
I think it's really disheartening.
Okay.
They don't want you to talk to me anymore.
No, it's not
It's not that. It's
fine.
technically, we're not supposed to, so. Anyone else? Not yet.
Is there?
Not yet.
Oh.
I'm going to open to old or new business. No, it's old or new business. Is it having to do with old or new business?
I have no old or new business.
What did you want to say?
No, I just wanted to say that, is there room on the survey that you've been talking about with personnel to write their concerns?
Yes, there is room, yes.
So if they don't want to come to a meeting and they don't want to express or say something,
There is room.
that they have a chance
Yep,
to write it down on the survey.
yes. Mr.
Okay.
Griffin?
It might be interesting, too, just looking at the draft we have right now. I don't know if we ask specifically about math or
We do.
readings.
We do.
We separate it out
Yes.
specifically? Okay, perfect.
Any other question, any other old or new business? Mrs. Walker?
Reflecting on what you had just said, and thank you for all your input, but if the scores were so bad that this has to happen immediately, we wouldn't be sitting here like this saying, why are we not doing something? So I think that we have to take it, and we will take it into consideration,
You can't speak now, sorry.
but
Sorry.
it's a concern of mine. And certainly, knowing every person on this board, there's not one of us that wouldn't want to look into something if we thought that it was
100%.
so pressing.
Yes, it needs to go to curriculum at this point. It needs to go to curriculum, in depth.
Yep, and we will review it.
We should have a meeting soon, too.
I do have
Mr. Griffin.
a question actually for you. Could we open up the floor again to have her have a chance to comment back? It felt like maybe she had something to say. I didn't know if that was possible at this point.
We're really not supposed to be having a dialogue. It's not the purpose of the meeting.
I agree.
And
I understand.
Mrs. Walker brought up scores, so I don't know if we need to.
I think from
So in a public meeting, there are times to speak, and we have it open, and if you watch every public meeting in the state runs a certain way. I mean, I'll allow you to come back.
We can let Ms. Walker's comment be the last one that the scores can speak for themselves. When I can share with you the number of families that have reached out and were told their children shouldn't take the exam, or that they had tutors, or that they spend the time. So we can let Ms. Walker's comment be the last one that if there were so many problems, we could have acted faster.
I would ask people to come to our meeting and speak about the problems.
Looking to rally the troops. But if you need the troops to be able to take something seriously, rather than research, you can rally troops.
I'd like to say something while we're talking about new business and old business. So, look, I don't think this should be adversarial, right? I don't think that you have to worry about me barging into your subcommittee, demanding change, right? So, but I think that this should be a high priority. And I think that we should have realistic goals. And I think that we should have, corresponding actions. So that's just my opinion.
I think
Just
the
wanna
high
let other board
priority is to
members know that.
investigate it and then see where it leads us.
Well, okay, that's fine.
So, Ms. Bozios, someone just made a comment about parents being told, their parents were told to have their kids not take the test? Is that what you're saying?
We have a 99% test rate. So yes, circumstances do come up, but we did have a 99% test rate.
And we did look at that last time. We did see the numbers per grade. Yeah, you go.
Necessarily mean that they followed the advice. So you can't say just because you had 99% take a test, that means that a teacher didn't tell a parent.
However, if the allegation is that people didn't test because that would lower the test scores,
That's not what she said. She said they were, but.
what would the impetus be for
what would be the
encouraging?
reason?
How
Why
much
would you?
would one bring down the score?
I would actually see the number. I mean, you would see more numbers if there were more kids that didn't, That does happen. I'm going to be honest, it does happen in
Your comment doesn't
some.
mean her comment's not true.
True, except I'm just saying that those test scores didn't, if Mrs. Walker is saying that the test scores were at an okay level, and I will tell you they are, I believe, at an okay level in language arts. I do not believe, and we have said that as a board, they are in an okay level in mathematics, okay? So we agree with that. All I was saying is I don't attribute that to students not taking the test.
And I can just say that my daughter scored well on ELA, and she's a terrible reader. So does the scores really translate to good readers, is what I'd like to know.
I guess I would need to know what you need to define someone as a good reader. We'll know more, frankly, and because we know right now we compare our test scores to the state of New Jersey, right? When the results come out for the rest of the county and we compare our test scores to that, if our students are still achieving higher than all of Bergen County, Doesn't that say something? Well, we don't know if she is, because we only know her performance here. Until we know maybe that 90% is horrible, because maybe everyone else in the Bergen County Eye scored 95% passing. Okay, but until that comes out, I don't have that.
So, sorry, I'm just going to beat this to death. My opinion is I don't care what the test scores are. If someone has a better plan or a better way of doing something, I think we should entertain the idea of doing it. I don't care what it is. And I think that it's worth looking into. And I know that, I think we're all in agreement. We're looking into this. So I think that the question is to what extent and how quickly. And, that I'll leave up to the subcommittee, and I'll leave it up to the superintendent and the professionals in the room. But if there is a better way, we should be doing it. I mean, I think we all agree we do that all the time anyway. So, we could have done, I could just speak for myself in terms of all the things that I get involved here at the school. We could have done things a cheaper, easier, faster way where it didn't take as much involvement. But we decided not to do that. And, sometimes it takes more time and effort and governance on my part, but, at the end of the day, it's a higher quality result, and you feel accomplished. So I don't think this board has a problem with, not trying to achieve, higher standards. So, so we'll just see. I don't think this is like we're going to say no and move on. So that's just my opinion.
Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say as part of a new business is more of an invite to folks at home that this board and this school is your school. This is the community school. This is the taxpayer school. The people up on this board were elected to represent. We're doing our best jobs. We really are. We want to hear from you. At times it can be difficult, and at times people may feel like you're not being heard. I will say that if there's something you care about this school, if there's something you care about that's not getting done, go through the processes and find it out. If you don't get the answer you want at first, keep asking. If you feel like you're being shut down, come here. Sometimes our procedures and processes can seem like we're being cold. We look at you when we don't answer you, don't want to talk to you or whatever. But we are listening, and there are going to be more opportunities for us to listen. There are smart people in this building that are trying to do the best for our kids. And I would say that I think we're doing a great job. That does not mean that there isn't information out there that means that we can do things better, and maybe there is a way we can do it faster. I think the important thing that I wanted to leave as a message to the public is this is your school as much as it is anybody's school, and I want you to come and I want you to share information. There's surveys that are going to be coming out. There are seats here open for you to be here and share what you feel is important. Thanks.
Mrs. Walker?
And just a quick update on what Jeremy said is that it's good to hear your opinion, and we appreciate that. And the more we hear, and that's what Jeremy said, this is your school, and we're all open to listening and looking at where we go next if what we're doing is not appropriate. So I thank you for coming, and hopefully we can encourage more to come if the feeling is the same.
Any other old or new business? Any need for a closed session from anybody? Okay,
So I move to adjourn.
8:56.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
8:56.
We asked what time we should be